Ready today? JustProfessor here. You think you know what most people think. You think you understand how the world works. You think your opinions are based on real information. But they're not. You're basing everything on a tiny distorted sample that doesn't represent reality at all. And you have no idea how wrong you are. This is called sampling bias, and it's making you ignorant while convincing you that you're informed. You look around at the people you know, the content you see online, the experiences you've had, and you think that's what the world is like. But it's not. You're seeing a fraction of reality, a twisted version that confirms what you already believe, and you're using it to make sweeping conclusions about billions of people you've never met. So what is sampling bias? It's when the information you collect doesn't represent the full picture. You're drawing conclusions based on a sample that's too small, too specific, or too skewed to tell you anything useful. But your brain doesn't know that. It takes whatever information it has access to and treats it like it's the whole truth. And that's how you end up completely wrong while being completely confident. Here's a simple example. You're scrolling through social media. Everyone seems to be having an amazing life. Vacations, promotions, perfect relationships. You start thinking everyone's doing better than you. But here's what you're missing. People only post the good stuff. Nobody's posting about their fights, their debt, their failures. You're seeing a biased sample that only shows the highlights. But your brain treats it like it's representative of reality. So now you think everyone's life is perfect except yours, when the truth is, everyone's struggling just like you. You just can't see it because the sample is biased. This happens everywhere. Think about product reviews. You're buying something online. You check the reviews. Mostly 5 stars. A few 1 stars. Looks good, right? But here's the problem. The people who leave reviews aren't a random sample. They're the people who felt strongly enough to leave a review. Most people who buy a product and think it's fine don't leave a review. So you're only seeing the extremes, the people who loved it and the people who hated it. The average experience, which is probably the most common, is invisible to you. That's sampling bias. Or think about surveys. Companies send out surveys to customers. Only the really happy people and the really angry people respond. Everyone in the middle ignores the survey. Now the company thinks their product is either amazing or terrible, based on this biased sample. They make decisions based on that data, and those decisions are wrong because the data was never representative in the first place. Sampling bias destroys your understanding of politics. You talk to your friends, your family, people in your community, and they mostly agree with you, so you think your political views are common sense. You think most people think like you do. But your social circle is not a random sample of the population. It's a biased sample of people who are similar to you. They live near you. They have similar backgrounds, similar experiences, similar values. So when you use them to judge what most people think, you're completely wrong. And then election results shock you because you had no idea how many people disagreed with you. You were living in a bubble created by sampling bias. This also explains why you think everyone is talking about something. You see a trending topic on social media. Everyone in your feed is discussing it. So you assume it's a huge deal, but it's not. It's just a big deal in your specific social media bubble. Outside that bubble, most people have no idea what you're talking about. Your sample is the people who follow similar accounts, engage with similar content, and exist in the same online spaces as you. That's not everyone. That's a tiny, biased sample. Sampling bias affects how you see entire groups of people. Let's say you had a bad experience with someone from a certain group. Maybe you met a few rude people from that country, that profession, that generation. Now you think everyone in that group is rude, but your sample size is what? 3 people, 5 people, out of millions? That's not data. That's an anecdote. But your brain takes that tiny, biased sample and applies it to the entire group. And now you're prejudiced based on nothing. Here's where sampling bias gets really dangerous. News media. The news doesn't report on normal, everyday stuff. It reports on unusual, dramatic, shocking events. crimes, disasters, scandals. That's the sample of information you're getting. So you think crime is everywhere, disasters are constant, and the world is falling apart. But statistically, the world is safer and better than it's ever been. You just can't see that because the news is giving you a massively biased sample that only shows the worst stuff. This makes you terrified of things that are incredibly rare. Plane crashes, shark attacks, kidnappings. These things get huge media coverage, so they feel common. But they're not. You're way more likely to die in a car crash, from heart disease, or from falling downstairs. But those don't make the news because they're boring. So your brain gets a biased sample that makes rare events seem common and common events seem rare. And now your fear is completely disconnected from actual risk. Sampling bias also ruins your understanding of success. You see successful people and you study them. You read their stories. You try to copy what they did. But here's the problem. You're only seeing the winners. You're not seeing the thousands of people who did the exact same things and failed. The successful people are a biased sample. They're not representative of everyone who tried. So when you follow their advice and it doesn't work, you're confused. But it's not your fault. You based your strategy on a biased sample that made success look easier and more predictable than it actually is. This is called survivorship bias, and it's a type of sampling bias. You only see the survivors, the businesses that succeeded, the artists who made it, the investors who got rich. But for every one of them, there are hundreds or thousands who tried the same thing and failed. You just don't see those people because they're not visible. They didn't survive. So your sample is biased toward success, which makes you think success is more common than it is. Here's another way sampling bias shows up. Stereotypes. You hear stories about a certain group. Maybe you read articles or see movies or hear jokes. And these stories tend to show the same characteristics over and over. So you start thinking that's what that group is like. But the stories you're hearing are a biased sample. They're the stories that got attention, that were dramatic or funny or controversial. They're not representative of the group as a whole. But your brain doesn't know that. It takes the sample and generalizes. And now you have a stereotype based on bad data. So why does your brain do this? Why does it treat small biased samples like they're the whole truth? Because your brain is lazy. Collecting a truly representative sample is hard. It takes time, effort, and access to information you don't have. So your brain takes shortcuts. It uses whatever information is easily available and pretends that's good enough. And most of the time, you never find out that you were wrong. So your brain never learns to do better. Your brain also has confirmation bias, which makes sampling bias even worse. You already have beliefs. So when you're collecting information, you pay more attention to things that confirm what you already think. You ignore things that contradict you. So your sample gets even more biased because you're actively selecting for information that agrees with you. Now, you're not just working with a small sample. You're working with a small biased sample that you've made even more biased through cherry picking. So how do you fight sampling bias? How do you stop drawing conclusions from bad data? First, you need to recognize when your sample is too small. If you've only experienced something a few times, that's not enough to make broad conclusions. If you've only talked to a few people from a group, that's not enough to judge the whole group. Your brain wants to generalize fast. Resist that urge. Admit when you don't have enough information. Second, actively seek out diverse sources. Don't just listen to people who agree with you. Don't just read content that confirms your beliefs. Expose yourself to different perspectives, different experiences, different data. That won't eliminate sampling bias completely, but it'll make your sample less biased than it is now. Third, be skeptical of patterns. When you think you see a pattern, ask yourself if you're really seeing the full picture or just a biased sample. Are you noticing the hits and ignoring the misses? Are you only seeing the extreme cases and missing the average? Patterns based on biased samples are worse than useless. They're misleading. Fourth, look for base rates. Before you draw a conclusion based on your personal experience, check the actual statistics. What do the numbers say? What does the research show? Your personal sample might be totally different from the overall reality. And when there's a conflict, trust the data over your anecdotes. And finally, stay humble. Accept that you don't know as much as you think you know. Your view of the world is based on a tiny, biased sample of experiences and information. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. But it does mean you should be a lot less confident in your opinions and a lot more open to being wrong. Look, sampling bias is everywhere. It's in your social life, your political views, your understanding of risk, your beliefs about other people. You're constantly drawing conclusions from bad data, and you don't even realize it because your brain hides the bias from you. It shows you the sample and pretends that's all there is. The truth is, the world is way bigger, way more complex, and way more varied than the little slice of it you've seen. And until you accept that, you're going to keep being wrong while thinking you're right. You're going to keep making bad decisions based on incomplete information. And you're going to keep being surprised when reality doesn't match your expectations. So next time you're confident about something, ask yourself what your conclusion is based on. Is it real data? Or is it just a small biased sample that your brain decided to treat as truth? Because most of the time, it's the latter. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. If this made you realize how little you actually know, hit subscribe.